The dog's barking echoed through the dimly lit living room, sharp and urgent. "It's just the closet again," Mom said with a laugh, brushing off the noise. The family sat around, amused, unaware of the creeping tension. Dad chuckled. "Maybe it's just a raccoon in there." The kids giggled, leaning into the joke, their eyes flickering between the dog and the closed door. Suddenly, the dog's barks grew louder, more frantic, teeth bared, fur raised, as if warning of unseen danger. All right, let's see what's up," Dad said, standing slowly, eyes narrowing on the closet. Mom grabbed the handle, her smile fading as a cold draft slipped out from the crack. The room went silent, except for the dog's furious growls. When the door creaked open, the family froze, breath caught, hearts pounding, the laughter dying in their throats. Nothing should have been there, but something was. Something that made the dog's hackles rise like never before. The family's laughter died as silence took over the room. The dog stood rigid, eyes locked on the open closet, growling low. "There's nothing there," Dad said shakily, stepping closer, but his voice betrayed doubt. The children clung to each other, faces pale. Mom's hand trembled as she reached again, but this time the air felt colder, heavier. "Maybe it's just shadows playing tricks," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Suddenly, a faint noise, a scraping, soft but deliberate, came from deep inside the closet. The dog barked again, fiercer than before, warning them not to go further. The family exchanged worried glances, their amusement gone, replaced by a creeping dread they couldn't shake. Dad's hand brushed the edge of the closet, fingers trembling. "Let's just get this over with," he muttered. The dog backed away but kept growling. Mom moved forward, flashlight in hand, the beam cutting through the darkness. The closet was small, filled with coats and boxes, yet something felt wrong. A chill deeper than cold. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered. "Did you see that?" whispered the boy, eyes wide. A shadow shifted at the back of the closet, disappearing before they could focus. The family's nerves frayed, their brave facade cracking. "Maybe we shouldn't have opened it," Mom said softly, fear creeping into her voice. The boy's voice cracked as he pointed to a dark corner. Something moved there. The dog's barking turned frantic, scratching at the floor near the closet. Dad shone the flashlight into the shadowy corner, nothing but a tangle of coats. "We're just tired," Dad said, trying to reassure everyone, but his voice shook. Suddenly a cold gust slammed the closet door shut, startling them all. The dog growled fiercely, hackles raised, standing protectively by the door. "Did you see that?" whispered the girl, clutching her brother's arm. The family's unease swelled into panic as the closet door remained closed, hiding whatever lurked inside. The room fell into heavy silence, thick with fear. Mom reached for the doorknob again, hand steady but heart pounding. "We have to know," she said quietly. Dad nodded, swallowing hard. Together. The children watched, eyes wide, gripping each other's hands tightly. The dog whimpered softly, tail low, but eyes still fixed on the door. Slowly, Mom turned the knob, the door creaking open again to reveal emptiness. No shadows, no movement, just the stale, cold air. But the feeling of being watched remained, and the family's relief was fragile. Something was wrong, and they all knew it. The family retreated from the closet, hearts racing, breaths shallow. "Maybe we should call someone," Mom suggested, voice tight. Dad shook his head. "We can't just ignore this." The dog paced nervously, ears perked. The children clung to each other, eyes scanning the room. The air thickened with unease, shadows growing longer as the sun dipped below the horizon. Suddenly, a soft tapping echoed from the closet, rhythmic, deliberate, unnerving. Mom froze, whispering, "Did you hear that?" The boy nodded, trembling. Dad reached for his phone but hesitated. The dog's growl deepened, as if warning them against the next step. The house, once safe, felt like a trap closing in. Dad finally dialed, his fingers shaking. The line rang, cutting through the heavy silence. "Hello? Yes, it's urgent," he whispered. The dog barked suddenly, ears pinned back, sensing something more. "We're not alone," Mom said, eyes darting toward the closet. A cold breeze swept through the room, flickering the lamp's flame. The children held their breath as a faint voice echoed, a whispering too soft to understand. "Who's there?" Dad demanded, voice firm despite the fear. The whispering stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed on their nerves. The closet door creaked slightly, as if breathing. Their reality was slipping, unraveling before their eyes. The call ended abruptly. "They're busy," Dad muttered, frustration mixing with fear. The dog growled low again, fur bristling. Mom shone a flashlight toward the closet. The beam trembled slightly. "Look," she whispered, pointing to a small dark shape shifting inside. The children gasped, backs pressed to the sofa. "It's nothing," Dad said quickly, but his voice cracked. The dog lunged forward, teeth bared, and the shape vanished into the shadows. The room plunged into darkness as the power flickered and died. Panic erupted, the family's fragile calm shattered. They were trapped in silence and shadow with something watching. A sudden thud echoed from inside the closet, sharp and heavy. The dog barked frantically, scratching at the floorboards. Dad grabbed a baseball bat from the corner, gripping it tightly. "Stay close," he ordered. Mom held the children, trying to steady their trembling. Another thud, closer, louder, followed by a dragging sound. Fear clawed at their throats. The dog growled fiercely, standing guard. "What is it?" the girl whimpered. Dad's eyes scanned the darkness, heart pounding. The closet seemed alive, breathing with something ancient and hungry. Every second stretched unbearably, the family caught between courage and terror. Suddenly, a chilling whisper floated from the closet, low and unintelligible. The dog howled, ears pinned back, tail tucked tightly. Mom stepped forward, voice shaking. "Who's there? Show yourself." The house seemed to hold its breath. Then the closet door slammed shut violently, the sound echoing through the stillness. The family jumped, shock rippling through them. Dad banged the bat against the door. "Open up!" he yelled. Silence answered. They stood frozen, the weight of the unknown pressing down. The dog whimpered softly, eyes reflecting a fear deeper than theirs. Whatever lurked was no longer hiding. The oppressive silence settled heavily, broken only by the dog's low, threatening growl. Dad gripped the bat tighter, knuckles white, his breath shallow but steady. "We need to figure this out before it escalates," he said, voice strained yet resolute. Mom nodded, forcing calm. "Maybe the house holds secrets we never knew about this closet." The kids clung tightly to each other on the sofa, their wide eyes flicking nervously toward the dark corner. Then, a slow, deliberate scratching began on the wall near the closet, soft but unmistakable. The dog stiffened, ears twitching as its body tensed. Worry etched across their faces. The family realized the unknown had started creeping beyond the closet's door, invading every corner of their home and their sanity. Dad's voice was barely above a whisper, but his decision was firm. "We need to check the basement. That might explain the strange noises and cold drafts." The dog darted ahead, sniffing the stale air as the family descended the narrow wooden stairs. Each step creaked ominously beneath their feet, swallowed by shadows. Mom clutched a flickering lantern, casting thin wavering light over cracked concrete walls and exposed rusty pipes. The children held onto her arms, their breaths quickening with every echo. Suddenly a cold gust swept past, extinguishing the lantern's flame in an instant. "Stay close," Dad hissed urgently. Something shifted in the darkness, something unseen, but watching them silently. The cold was deeper here, and fear tangled tightly with curiosity as they ventured further into the unknown. The basement felt like a tomb of forgotten memories. Broken furniture, dusty boxes, and a stale heaviness that clung to the air. Dad's footsteps echoed hollowly as he swept the lantern light over the clutter. "Look at this," Mom said, voice trembling as she pointed to a series of deep claw marks freshly carved into the cracked concrete wall behind a tattered tarp. The children gasped, their faces draining of color. The dog growled low and fierce, hackles raised. "Something's been down here," Dad said grimly, voice thick with dread. Without warning, a loud slam echoed from upstairs, the basement door shutting forcefully. Panic surged, thickening the air. "We're not alone," Mom whispered, eyes wide. The walls seemed to close in as the coldness deepened, pressing down on their lungs. A sudden deafening crash upstairs shattered the silence. Dad's grip tightened on the bat, pulse pounding. "Stay here," he barked sharply. The dog growled, matching his resolve as they ascended the stairs together. Mom clutched the children, whispering quiet reassurances they barely believed. As Dad reached the living room, his eyes caught the closet door swinging wide open, cold mist spilling out like a living thing. The air was thick with a presence, ancient, malevolent, hungry. The dog barked wildly and charged into the closet, teeth bared, muscles taut. Dad followed cautiously, heart hammering against his ribs. Whatever waited inside was watching, and it was no longer hiding. Inside the pitch-black closet, Dad's flashlight pierced only a thin cone of light, shadows dancing just beyond reach. His breath hitched as a sudden, icy hand brushed his forearm, cold and solid, sending chills down his spine. The dog snarled violently, lunging toward the source, teeth snapping inches away from nothing visible. "Who's there?" Dad demanded, voice echoing hollowly. Only silence answered, followed by a faint mournful whisper, fragile and sorrowful but warning clear. "Leave. Now." Outside, the family waited, breath held, hearts pounding. The closet pulsed with an eerie life of its own, a dark heartbeat of ancient grief and warning. Fear and determination battled inside them. Whatever haunted that space wanted to speak, but at a terrible price. Dad stumbled back from the closet, his face pale and sweaty, the icy chill still crawling up his arm. "We can't ignore this anymore," he said, voice shaking with adrenaline. Mom gripped the kids close, eyes wide with fear yet fierce resolve. The dog circled nervously, low growls rumbling from deep in its throat. "What is it?" the girl whispered, voice barely audible. Dad shook his head slowly, swallowing hard. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's angry." The room felt smaller, shadows deeper. Every breath came with a sharp chill. The family huddled together, preparing to face an enemy they couldn't see but felt everywhere, waiting for the next move in a game they never agreed to play. "We need answers," Mom insisted, pacing as fear and frustration mingled in her voice. "There has to be a reason for all this." Dad nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "The closet. It's more than a closet. It's a threshold." The children watched, clutching each other, their young faces haunted but curious. "Threshold to what?" the boy asked quietly. Mom's eyes darkened. "To something old, something forgotten. Maybe a spirit, or worse." The dog barked sharply, breaking the tension. "We'll find out, together," Dad said firmly. The house felt alive with secrets waiting to be uncovered, and the family knew the fight was far from over. In desperation, Dad scoured old family albums and dusty boxes in the attic, searching for clues. The dog lay nearby, restless. "Look at this," Dad murmured, holding a faded photograph. It showed the house decades ago, a younger family, the same closet, but behind its door, a strange dark stain on the floor. Mom leaned in, her breath catching. "That stain, it's like the darkness we felt." The children watched, eyes wide, understanding the house's history was tangled with something sinister. Dad's voice dropped low. "This house has secrets, and we're standing in the middle of them." Outside, wind rattled the windows like a warning. The past was closing in fast. That night, sleep was impossible. The family huddled in the living room, lights dimmed low, dog curled protectively at their feet. Suddenly, a whisper echoed. Soft, urgent, almost pleading, from the closet. Mom's breath caught. "Did you hear that?" Dad nodded, frozen. The children clung tightly to their parents, eyes wide with terror. The whisper grew louder, a broken lullaby from long ago, weaving through the cold air. "Help me," it begged. The dog barked fiercely, then whimpered, tail between legs. The closet seemed alive, pulsating with sorrow and anger. The family's fear mixed with sorrow. They weren't alone, and someone or something needed them. Determined to confront the haunting, Dad stood and said, "We need to face this, head on." Mom nodded, voice firm but gentle. "Together." The children nodded too, bravery flickering despite their fear. The dog stood, growling low but ready. Dad reached for the closet door, hand steady this time. As the door slowly opened, a rush of cold air spilled out, carrying whispers and faint cries. The room held its breath as shadows twisted and swirled within. "Whatever this is," Dad said, "we're not letting it win." Their fight had only begun, a battle of wills against an unseen force tied deeply to the house's darkest secrets. The closet's cold breath washed over them as Dad slowly stepped inside, the dog right behind, muscles coiled. Mom and the kids waited anxiously in the living room, eyes fixed on the doorway. Inside, shadows twisted, forming shapes just beyond the flashlight's reach. Dad's voice echoed softly, "I'm here. Show yourself." The air grew thick, suffocating and heavy with sorrow. Suddenly, a faint figure flickered in the darkness, an apparition, translucent and pale, eyes filled with pain. The dog growled low, refusing to back down. "Why are you here?" Dad whispered, heart pounding. The spirit's lips moved, but no sound came. The family's nightmare was no longer hidden. It had revealed itself. Back in the living room, Mom's voice trembled as she whispered, "It wants to tell us something." The children clung to her, eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. Suddenly, a soft tapping began on the closet door, slow, deliberate, like a heartbeat. "Listen," Dad said, returning breathless. "It's trying to communicate." The dog growled, ears pricked, as the tapping grew louder. Mom's fingers brushed the door, and a cold shock ran through her. "There's a message here, something we must understand." The family realized this wasn't just haunting. It was a plea, a story trapped in shadows and silence, begging for release. Determined to uncover the truth, Dad searched the attic for old diaries and letters. He found a dusty journal filled with faded handwriting, a tale of loss and betrayal tied to the house. The journal spoke of a child lost long ago, trapped by grief and darkness inside the closet's walls. Mom and the children gathered close, reading silently, their faces pale with sorrow. "This is why it's trapped," Mom said softly. "It's waiting for justice, for someone to remember." The dog whimpered softly, sensing the heavy truth. The family's fear now mingled with purpose. They had to free the spirit or be consumed by the darkness themselves. Armed with knowledge, the family prepared for a ritual to set the spirit free. Candles flickered on the living room floor, casting dancing shadows. Mom read aloud from the journal, voice steady despite the trembling hands. The dog lay quietly, sensing the importance. The children held hands tightly, eyes closed in silent prayer. As the final words left Mom's lips, the room filled with a sudden gust of wind, extinguishing the candles. A chill ran down their spines. Then silence, deep and complete. Slowly, the closet door creaked shut, the oppressive presence lifting like a heavy fog. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. In the quiet aftermath, the family breathed deeply, relief mingling with exhaustion. The house felt lighter, warmer, the shadows retreating. Dad smiled faintly. "It's over, for now." Mom nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. The children yawned, tension easing. The dog curled at their feet, finally calm. Yet, a lingering unease remained. The closet door remained closed, but the memories etched into the walls whispered of things unseen. They had faced darkness and survived. But the house's secrets were far from fully told, and the night still held many shadows. Days passed in uneasy silence, but the house never truly felt peaceful again. Strange subtle noises whispered through empty rooms at night, soft creaks, faint sighs, as if the walls themselves breathed uneasily. The dog's pacing grew frantic, ears flicking toward shadows that seemed to shift and flicker just beyond sight. Mom stood by the window, her voice a quiet tremor as she admitted, "It feels like the spirit never really left us." Dad rubbed his eyes wearily, exhaustion deepening in his expression. The children tried to laugh and play, but their smiles were hollow, their laughter thin and forced. The closet door remained shut, a dark sentinel hiding secrets the family no longer dared to face. They realized then that releasing the spirit was only the beginning. The house held darker, older mysteries, tangled with shadows that stretched far deeper, ready to consume all who dared stay. In the stillness of night, the dog's sudden furious barking shattered the fragile calm, jolting the family awake. Hearts hammered as they scrambled from their beds, drawn by the eerie pulsating glow, seeping from beneath the closet door. Mom's hands trembled as she snatched up a flashlight, her voice barely above a whisper, "It's happening again." Dad's throat tightened, dread seeped into his words as he whispered back, "We have to face it." The family gathered, hands clasped tightly, breaths shallow, eyes wide with growing terror. The door began to slowly creak open, not revealing darkness but a swirling vortex of light and shadow, a tear in reality itself. Time seemed to hold its breath. The once familiar home twisted into a gateway to the unknown. The family stood frozen on the edge of an unfathomable mystery. Their lives were forever changed. The nightmare was far from over. With trembling hands clutching a flashlight, Dad stepped cautiously into the vortex, his light slicing through the chaotic swirl of colors and shadows. "Whatever lurks inside, we face it together," he declared with a shaky voice. Mom squeezed his hand tightly, anchoring them both in the storm of fear inside her chest. The children nodded, faces pale but their eyes shining with fragile bravery. The dog growled low, body tense and ready. As Dad crossed the threshold, the very fabric of reality warped around him. The room stretched and folded, colors bled into one another in an impossible dance. Shadowy figures flickered at the edges of his vision, whispering secrets of betrayal and pain buried deep within the house walls. Promises shattered, lives stolen, a curse as old as the foundation itself. The fight for their souls had only just begun, and failure was not an option. Suddenly, the vortex violently expelled Dad back into the living room. He collapsed breathless, skin clammy, and heart hammering painfully against his ribs. "It's a curse," he gasped, voice ragged and heavy with horror. "Deep-rooted in this house, born from betrayal, bloodshed and broken promises." Mom held him close, tears streaking down her cheek silently. The children clung to one another, terror and determination tangled in their wide eyes. "We have to break it," Dad said with fierce resolve, "before it consumes us all." The dog whimpered, sensing the malevolent force tightening its grip like an invisible noose. Together, the family vowed to uncover the curse's origin and destroy it, no matter the sacrifice. Their home was no longer a sanctuary, it was a battleground, and their survival depended on unwavering courage and unity. Determined to end the nightmare once and for all, the family dove headfirst into dusty town records and whispered legends preserved in old books and brittle papers. They uncovered a story of bitter betrayal, heartbreak, and bloodshed, a family curse cast long ago by a scorned soul who vanished without a trace. "The curse feeds on silence and fear," Mom explained, voice steady but filled with fierce resolve. "We must face it with truth and courage, break the cycle." Dad nodded solemnly. "We'll break the silence, no matter the cost." The children listened, eyes wide but slowly filling with hope. The dog sat quietly at their feet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. The final battle loomed ahead, an unyielding test of their strength, unity and will against the dark legacy that threatened to consume them all. The family prepared for the final confrontation with a mixture of dread and determination. Candles flickered on the wooden floor, casting long, trembling shadows. Mom clutched the ancient journal tightly, reading aloud words meant to sever the curse. Dad held the bat, eyes sharp but wary, scanning the dim room. The children joined hands, their breaths shallow but steady. The dog sat alert, low growls vibrating in its throat. As the ritual began, a cold wind swept through the house, snuffing candles and raising hairs on their necks. The closet door slammed shut, then creaked ominously. The atmosphere thickened with a palpable darkness, heavy, ancient, and hungry. This was the moment I'd feared and hoped for. Face the darkness or be consumed by it. The house groaned as the ritual unfolded, whispers, wails, and shadows swirling violently around them. The dog barked fiercely, hackles raised, circling protectively. Mom's voice shook as she recited the incantation, her hands trembling but unwavering. Dad gripped the bat tighter, heart pounding. Suddenly, the closet door burst open, releasing a rush of cold air and swirling shadows that clawed at their skin. The children screamed but held their ground, eyes wide with terror and determination. The darkness surged, then faltered, as if resisting the words spoken aloud. The battle between light and shadow raged, ancient forces clashing in the heart of their home. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled and the room stilled. The dog barked once sharply. Mom's voice softened, tears slipping down her cheeks. It's over. The heavy darkness lifted, replaced by a fragile, trembling light. The closet door slowly closed, sealing away the lingering darkness. The family collapsed together, relief washing over their trembling bodies. They had survived the curse, but their lives would never be the same. They understood now that the past was never truly buried, and the house would always carry its scars. But they had fought, and for now, the darkness was held at bay. The days that followed were quiet, filled with small moments of healing. The family shared stories, laughter returning slowly. Yet the closet remained closed, a silent guardian of memories and warnings. Dad said softly, "We faced our darkest fears. We survived because we stood together." Mom smiled, wiping away a tear, "And we will always remember what we fought." The children played freely again, their shadows lighter, their smiles genuine. The dog rested contentedly, a protector and friend. Though the house still whispered secrets in the quiet hours, the family had reclaimed their home, for now. Yet as night fell, a single whisper echoed faintly from the closet, barely audible, a fragile breath of warning. The family paused, hearts still beating fast. Dad whispered, "We're safe. For now." Mom nodded, eyes reflecting both love and caution. The dog lifted its head, ears twitching. The house had changed them, forever marked by what they had faced. Darkness would always linger in the corners, but they would meet it with courage together. Because in the end, love and unity were their strongest light. And as long as they stood together, no shadow could ever truly consume them.